The train emitted a hissing sound as it decelerated, steam rising in delicate wisps into the fresh Wyoming air. Julia McCrowley disembarked from the last car, her gloved hand firmly gripping the handle of her well-worn carpet-bag. She donned her finest blue dress, a high-collared piece adorned with intricate lace at the cuffs, now softened by the passage of time and repeated laundering. The hem lightly touched the dust of the Rollins station platform, yet she remained unaware. Her gaze was directed forward, focused on the future that had been assured to her. She carefully smoothed the folded letter in her pocket with trembling fingers, as if reassurance might be found in the ink and parchment. The correspondence was received 4 months prior, dispatched by an individual named Harlan Pike, a rancher and widower, seeking companionship, housekeeping assistance, and a reliable presence. It was stated that he desired a bride. Upon discovering her listing in the matrimonial classifieds, he responded with thoughtful and heartfelt words, which moved Julia to tears as she read them. She had not anticipated that a man would ever compose such a letter for her again, especially at the age of 52. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, which was stiff with travel grime, and surveyed her surroundings. The town was unrefined and straightforward. 2 saloons, a church, and a dry goods store featuring a crooked sign. Dust adhered to all surfaces. No one was present to await her arrival. She remained poised, the sole passenger remaining, as the train departed with a series of groans and wheezes. A group of young men gathered on the porch of the nearby saloon, exchanging hushed remarks and furtive glances that sent a shiver down her spine. A voice, distinctly masculine, called out behind her, "Julia Crowley." She pivoted abruptly, her heart racing. Presenting Harlan Pike. He exceeded her expectations in height, possessing a sun-kissed complexion, sandy hair, and a prominent mustache that elegantly curled at the edges. He donned a tan duster coat, sturdy boots that bore the marks of extensive use, and a revolver secured at his hip. An individual of notable standing, based on outward impressions. However, the instant their gazes intersected, a chill enveloped her inner being. He regarded her with a frown that began subtly and intensified with each passing moment. He observed her features, noting the silver strands in her hair and the subtle curvature of her back that she had made efforts to conceal. He stated matter-of-factly that he had assumed you were younger. Julia's mouth opened. "My age was never inquired about," he muttered, casting a brief glance at the letter she was holding. "I initially believed that was an error in printing." Her cheeks flushed. "Mr. Pike, you reached out to me. You stated, I am aware of my previous statement." He averted his gaze, his expression becoming stern. "I was not anticipating someone of my mother's age. She endured the pain. You expressed a desire for companionship and a preference for someone reliable. I have experienced both roles." He emitted a brief, serious laugh. "Consistent and confident. What I desired was for someone to provide me with sons. Not an individual who has concluded that phase of life." The words struck her with unexpected force. The laughter of the boys at the saloon echoed behind her, their amusement evident and unrestrained. A single whistle sounded softly. "Julia," Harlan stated, his tone firm and resolute, "I do not believe in humiliating a lady. Regrettably, I am unable to proceed with marriage. It simply would not be effective." She stated gently, "You have already done so. I feel that I have been subjected to humiliation." He adjusted his hat with a hint of awkwardness. "I will cover the cost of your train fare back east." "I sold everything I owned to reach this point," she asserted, her voice strained. "There is no option to return." However, he had already begun to walk away. She remained solitary on the platform. The burden of each year she had experienced rested heavily upon her shoulders, akin to a leaden shroud. A call was received from one of the boys. "Would you like assistance with that bag, ma'am?" accompanied by additional laughter. She tightened her grip on the carpet bag and stepped off the platform, her posture unwavering, disregarding the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. She was uncertain about her destination. By sundown, her boots were covered in dust and her stomach felt an empty ache. She had not consumed any food since the train came to a halt that morning. She navigated the outskirts of town, seeking a serene location to sit, reflect, and strategize. Her trunk, the remnants of her possessions, had vanished. She assumed it was taken when she left it at the station while searching for Arlen. She positioned herself on the edge of a parched creek bed, gazing thoughtfully at the horizon. The wind gently pulled at her hat and tousled the loose strands of silver-blonde hair framing her ears. The distant howling of coyotes echoed through the night. Julia Crowley had held various roles throughout her career. A spouse at one time, a mother for a short period, a skilled seamstress, a nurse attending to her terminally ill neighbors. However, this sense of humiliation, accompanied by a profound and persistent loneliness, was an entirely novel experience. A lifetime of restraint, of adhering to principles, of maintaining composure with hands neatly folded and chin held high, had led her to this moment. To a fractured expanse of soil, beneath an ominous sky, in a community that rejected her presence. She ought to have remained at home, allowing herself to diminish like the many other overlooked women. A flash of lightning illuminated the distant clouds, succeeded by a low, resonant rumble of thunder. She required a place of refuge. Her pride had endured considerable challenges. She stood up with a certain rigidity and proceeded to walk toward the flickering light visible in the window of a remote cabin at the outskirts of town. However, prior to her reaching the road, a voice emerged from the shadows. "Are you in need of assistance, ma'am?" She pivoted abruptly, her heart racing. A gentleman emerged from the shadows of a cottonwood grove. The horses moved gracefully, their hooves gently striking the compacted earth. The lantern suspended from his saddle swayed gently, illuminating him in a blend of gold and shadow. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, lean and square-shouldered, with eyes that reflected the light just enough to reveal their sharpness. He donned a dark coat, lightly coated with trail dust, and a rifle was positioned across his saddle. "I do not approach individuals stealthily, sir," she stated, her voice unwavering despite the unease in her stomach. He responded in a composed manner, indicating that it was not his intention to intrude. "I noticed you walking toward the gulch. It is advisable to exercise caution in these areas after nightfall," she remarked, straightening herself, that she had encountered worse. "I hold the conviction that—" He observed her for a brief moment, then dismounted. "The name is Thomas Becket. I have acquired a cabin in close proximity to this location. We have secured nourishment, warmth, and a fire. You appear to be in need of all three." She paused momentarily. "I have no expectations," he added, perceiving her hesitation. "A designated area for drying off. The storm is expected to subside shortly." She looked up at the sky. The clouds swirled with a tumultuous intensity, resembling boiling ink. The wind had become harsh. In all honesty, she lacked the capacity to contest the proposal. "I suppose," she stated at last. "Thank you, Mr. Becket." He nodded and extended his hand to assist her in mounting behind him. She paused once more, yet ultimately placed her hand in his. The contact was unexpectedly warm. The journey was quiet, interrupted only by the sound of the wind and the steady cadence of hooves. The cabin came into view as the initial heavy drops of rain started to descend. A simple construction utilizing unrefined timber and stone materials. Illumination emanating through polished windows. Within the interior, the atmosphere was permeated by the rich aromas of wood smoke and rabbit stew. Julia experienced a noticeable rumble in her stomach. "He instructed you to take a seat. I will provide you with a blanket." She complied, settling herself into the robust rocking chair positioned by the fire. The warmth enveloped her, dispelling the chill that had settled into her bones since her time at the station. Thomas presented her with a mug of coffee. "A quilt is available on the bed should you wish to use it." She took a measured sip, the intense warmth dispelling the heaviness within her. He remarked that you are not from this area. She responded with a firm no. "I was destined to be." However, the individual reconsidered his decision. He refrained from inquiring about the reason. She mentioned that she is 52. "If you require clarification." "I was not." That rendered her speechless. He expressed his regret regarding the way you were treated. There are many individuals who mistakenly believe that a woman ceases to matter after the age of 40. Julia offered a subtle smile. "Some believed I ceased to matter at 30. He removed his coat and hung it by the fire. "My spouse passed away 5 years ago. Elevated body temperature. Since that time, it has been solely focused on the work. I am familiar with that particular type of silence." He regarded her attentively, then acknowledged her with a nod. Outside, a thunderclap resonated. The rain pounded against the roof. Within the space, two individuals gathered by the warmth of the fire, connected through their solitude and a delicate sense of dignity. Julia reclined in the chair and released a deep breath. She did not locate what she was seeking. However, an entity or individual had located her. The storm was merely at its inception. The fire emitted a gentle crackle in the stone hearth, serving as the sole sound within the modest cabin, accompanied only by the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof. Julia sat enveloped in a worn patchwork quilt, her hands cradling a tin mug of coffee that had long since cooled, yet she continued to sip it with a distracted cadence. The warmth of it, though subtle, grounded her in the moment. Thomas Becket operated with a calm and effective demeanor. He was a man familiar with silence and solitude, yet not unaffected by it. He positioned another log on the fire, adjusting it with the poker, taking care to avoid making direct eye contact with her. She observed the breadth and wear of his shoulders, suggesting he bore a burden greater than what the ranch required of him. "I am available to assist," she stated gently, indicating the pot that was simmering over the flame. "Your contributions have been substantial." He responded without turning, indicating that you are a guest. Guests are not available for work on the first night. The response was considerate, yet the manner in which it was delivered, gentle, assertive, and unequivocal, prompted her to recline in the chair. The storm outside intensified significantly. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wood, while rain struck the roof with a relentless and vigorous cadence. The West approached matters with full commitment. Neither storms, nor love, nor heartbreak. Thomas arrived with 2 bowls, serving a stew that emanated the rich aromas of rabbit, potatoes, and sage. She accepted hers with a nod of appreciation and took the first bite, pleasantly surprised by the richness. The sensation of hunger enhanced the flavor. She had not recognized the extent of her emptiness until this moment. They dined in quietude for a few moments, a silence that felt deserved rather than uncomfortable. It lingered between them like a common bond, frayed in areas, yet comforting. She stated, after a pause, that you were married, not as a question but as a definitive assertion. "Indeed," he responded. "A decade. Hannah passed away due to fever. She exhibited remarkable strength. The daughter of a rancher. More knowledgeable than I am. Could you please provide details on the situation?" The physician indicated that the issue pertains to the lungs. "Arrived unexpectedly. She was taken from me faster than I could resist." Julia acknowledged with a nod. "I experienced the loss of a child several years ago. A young male individual. 2 summers have passed. His illness marked a turning point, and the world appeared irrevocably altered thereafter." Their eyes met, and an unspoken connection formed between them, a recognition not of situation, but of deep-seated pain, the kind that resides within the very essence of being. He expressed his apologies. She responded in agreement. The storm continued to advance outside, unyielding. Thomas extended his hand to add another log to the fire, maintaining a steady grip despite the gusts of wind outside. "Do you have family or acquaintances in the eastern region?" She declined. "My sister passed away last winter." "My sibling." He exhibited kindness, but it was contingent upon his own needs. Consequently, he was not. "No one remains." She consumed another portion of the stew. "All others, excluding myself." "You have made significant progress despite not honoring your commitments." She expressed softly that she believed she had a second opportunity. "I considered the possibility that someone might notice me." "I acknowledge your presence," he stated without hesitation. The words lacked a romantic quality, not entirely. However, they demonstrated integrity. She gazed into the flames, the flickers of gold and orange moving gracefully, reminiscent of elusive memories she struggled to define. Her hands were sore from the cold, yet the warmth of the stew started to alleviate the stiffness. The discomfort in her chest persisted, a result of feeling deemed unworthy, as if her aspirations had been evaluated and deemed insufficient. Thomas rose and commenced the process of clearing the dishes. Julia stood up to assist, and this time he did not intervene. They moved in a harmonious rhythm, accustomed to solitude, yet pleasantly surprised by the ease of sharing the experience with another. While drying the bowls, she surveyed the cabin with a keen eye. The space was modest in size, yet meticulously maintained. Tools were organized and displayed in an orderly manner on the far wall. A rifle was positioned above the door. A single bed was positioned in the corner, the quilt neatly arranged, with a trunk placed at its foot. The environment was devoid of photographs or trinkets, consisting solely of the essential elements and the individual responsible for their maintenance. She observed that you prefer to avoid clutter. He responded with a wry smile, indicating that he had never experienced such a luxury. That smile evoked a deep emotional response within her. He did not possess the conventional attractiveness she recalled in young men, yet his features bore the marks of nature and the weight of difficult decisions. There was a presence of kindness, a quality she had not encountered in many years. Once the dishes were completed, he filled her cup with coffee again and gestured towards the rocking chair. "Rest more soundly by the fire." "And you?" she inquired. "I have an additional blanket." "The floor is acceptable. Your back may be at risk of injury. The situation has deteriorated significantly." She smiled at that, and he acknowledged her with a nod, appearing satisfied to have achieved it. The storm started to subside, its intensity diminishing to sporadic taps and faint rumbles. The atmosphere within the cabin became increasingly inviting. Thomas retrieved the spare blanket from the trunk and laid it out beside the fire. Julia observed him, uncertain of how to respond or proceed. There was no guide for situations such as these. There are no formalities for two individuals, each carrying their own burdens, finding solace in each other's presence after a challenging day. She inquired softly, "Why did you choose not to remarry?" He gazed into the fire for a moment prior to responding. "I was unable to identify a compelling reason to make another attempt. Until this evening, perhaps." She paused, not due to flattery, but because of the profound impact of his words. "Thomas, I do not wish to alarm you," he stated promptly, turning to address her. "There are instances when one encounters an individual and recognizes that they have endured significant challenges, yet emerged unscathed. They have recently acquired the skills to manage the intensity." She was at a loss for words in response to that. However, it was unnecessary for her to do so. He did not articulate it to gain her admiration. He articulated it because it was a fact. The wind sighed again through the crevices in the wood, now more subdued. The storm had extended its reach, yet Julia had not. She reclined in the chair, securing the quilt snugly around her shoulders. The fire illuminated the walls, creating shadows that moved gracefully, reminiscent of spirits released from their confines. Within her, a subtle warmth and a sense of possibility began to emerge. He stated softly that you would stay for a few days, already implying certainty rather than seeking confirmation. She responded gently, indicating that she had no other options. "This is your current location." She nodded and closed her eyes, not in slumber, but in a moment of respite, for the first time in days. A knock disrupted the tranquility. Julia recoiled, regaining her composure. Thomas quickly rose to his feet, rifle in hand. The knock resounded once more, this time with greater volume and urgency. He approached the door quietly, holding his breath, and raised the latch. On the opposite side stood a man, drenched completely, with eyes wide and scanning the surroundings. He appeared neither youthful nor aged, bearing a jagged scar across his cheek and a revolver securely holstered at his hip. He presented an unsettling demeanor, and his scent was equally disconcerting. "Good evening," the man stated. "The name is Cal. I apologize for the interruption. My horse sustained a leg injury approximately 1 mile ago. I have been walking since then. I nearly drowned in the storm." Thomas maintained his grip on the rifle. "You have not succeeded. It is a possibility. I am seeking a comfortable location to dry off. I will depart at dawn." Julia positioned herself beside Thomas, maintaining a respectful distance while providing silent support. She had reservations about the man at the door. His gaze assessed her with precision, as though he were attempting to identify her. "Are you traveling alone?" Cal inquired, a smile beginning to take shape. "She is accompanying me," Thomas stated firmly. Julia remained composed. She met the stranger's gaze directly. She was fully capable of managing her own circumstances. However, it was reassuring to be embraced, even if only for security. Thomas took a step back and partially opened the door. "You are welcome to join us for the evening. Only the floor. You should explore all possibilities. I am willing to lend you." Cal raised his hands in a gesture of feigned surrender. "I would not consider that possibility." The cabin appeared more confined once he entered. Julia maintained her distance, returning to her position by the fire. She observed as Thomas provided the man with a blanket, maintained the rifle within reach, and positioned himself between the visitor and her, remaining silent thereafter. Cal positioned himself near the door, yet Julia observed that his eyes remained partially open. He was attentive, poised for action. The atmosphere became dense once more, not with ease this time, but with strain. The storm outside had concluded, yet another had just entered. Once the fire had dimmed and the room fell silent, Julia inquired softly, "Do you believe he poses a risk?" Thomas remained with his eyes closed. "I am aware that he is. What are our services?" "We will take care of it," he stated succinctly. That sufficed. The quilt draped over her shoulders now felt more substantial, akin to protective armor. The cabin ceased to provide a sense of refuge from the storm. The atmosphere resembled a conflict zone, illuminated by flames and enveloped in a profound silence. However, she exhibited no fear. That is no longer the case. The morning gradually emerged in the cabin, characterized by a muted gray light, accompanied by the earthy aroma of damp soil and ash. Julia was the first to awaken, the lingering warmth of the fading fire barely permeating the atmosphere. She cleared the remnants of sleep from her mind and sat up, the patchwork quilt slipping from her shoulders. Her attention shifted to the doorway, where the unfamiliar figure, Cal, remained enveloped in the extra blanket. However, his breathing appeared unnatural, excessively even, and overly rehearsed. She stood still and composed, the floorboards creaking gently beneath her bare feet. She located Thomas with her gaze. He was already awake, seated in a chair adjacent to the table, a tin cup of black coffee held in his hands. The rifle was positioned against the wall, conveniently within arm's reach. He gazed at her, and in that moment, they conveyed all that was necessary between them. The individual remained a threat. Julia approached the compact stove, placing a pot on it to warm additional water. Her hands moved with precision, while her thoughts were in a flurry. Cal's arrival seemed somewhat unsettling and artificial. His gaze had meticulously surveyed the room, and his inquiries appeared overly nonchalant. Individuals of his caliber typically did not knock unless there was a clear benefit to be obtained. Cal gradually awakened, emitting a soft groan as he sat up, appearing to rise from slumber in a natural manner. "Good morning," he said, his voice hoarse from a cold. "Thank you for the warm hospitality. Not everyone on this side of the river exhibits generosity." Thomas did not respond. He observed the man with the composure of a seasoned strategist. Julia served the coffee to Cal silently. He accepted it, his smile uneven and slick. "Are you two married?" he inquired, taking a sip. Thomas responded with a firm no. "I would not have anticipated that." He assessed Julia once more, lingering a bit too long. "You support one another as if you have shared many years together." Julia remained composed. "We prioritize our well-being." Thomas's voice followed, calm and refreshing like a mountain spring. "What motivates you to venture out this far, Cal? I informed you that the horse has sustained a leg injury. The storm was severe, but it did not arrive quickly. It would be unwise to proceed without any available shelter for an extended distance." Cal placed his cup down with careful precision. "Are you suggesting that I am lacking in judgment?" Thomas observed without a hint of surprise, contemplating the peculiar sight of a man lacking a pack, saddlebag, and dressed in a pristine shirt, limping toward the cabins in search of refuge. The room became silent. The wind outside appeared to come to a standstill. Cal's smile remained, though it became more restrained. "Your level of suspicion is quite notable, Beckett. Experience provides valuable lessons." Julia adjusted her stance, placing herself strategically between the stove and the cabinet that housed Thomas's sidearm. She was uncertain of the outcome, yet her body was instinctively bracing itself for what was to come. The tension in her back dissipated. Her fingers curled, poised for action. Cal stated that he had no disagreement with you. I required a location to spend the night comfortably. I will be departing shortly, as I have completed my meal. Thomas rose with intention and carefully poured himself another cup of coffee. You will not be proceeding to your destination. You mentioned that your horse has sustained a leg injury. Cal's smile diminished. Thomas noted that there are no new tracks outside. There is no indication of a horse's presence. Julia observed as Cal's fingers moved closer to the blanket beside him. She advanced slightly toward the cabinet. At that moment, it occurred. Cal made a decisive move, not towards the coffee, nor the door, but towards Thomas's rifle. However, Thomas had anticipated it. He seized the grip of the firearm just as Cal's hand enveloped the barrel. The two men engaged in a struggle, exerting effort as the chair slid backward during their contest for dominance. Julia remained composed. She remained composed. She opened a cabinet with determination, retrieved the small revolver, and prepared it for use. "Release it," she commanded, her tone unwavering. Cal remained motionless, breathing heavily, his grip firmly secured around the rifle. His gaze shifted to the revolver, precisely directed at his chest. "I said to let go," Julia reiterated. Cal gradually loosened his hold. Thomas took a step back, elevating the rifle to align his aim precisely at the intruder. Julia maintained her composure. Cal regarded her with a dismissive expression. "You don't appear to be particularly impressive," he remarked. "An elderly woman holding a firearm." She responded, "You don't appear to be very impressive either. We find ourselves in this situation." Thomas inclined his chin toward the door. "Please leave the premises. At this moment. I currently have no destination." "That issue does not concern us," Julia stated sharply. "You entered with falsehoods. That will suffice." Cal inhaled deeply, assessing his chances. He must have perceived something in both their expressions, something resolute, as he muttered a curse and proceeded toward the door. "If I ever see you again," Thomas warned, "I will not wait for you to initiate action." Cal departed without uttering another word, the door closing forcefully behind him. Julia's hand remained raised until the sound of footsteps dissipated into the damp morning stillness. She then exhaled and placed the revolver on the table. Thomas regarded her with a prolonged, inscrutable expression. "Your management of that situation was commendable. I have managed more challenging situations." He carefully poured a fresh cup of coffee and placed it in front of her. "Your resilience surpasses that of many individuals I have encountered." She accepted the cup with a nod of appreciation. Experiencing a perception of fragility for 50 years can significantly impact a woman's outlook. Thomas took a seat. There was a prolonged silence between them, both enjoying their coffee while observing the world restore its tranquility. Subsequently, following a quiet breakfast, they proceeded outside together. The rain has subsided. The sky appeared overcast and muted. The land appeared more pristine, free from dust and tension. The tracks left by Cal were faint and dispersed. He had not traveled a significant distance. Julia acknowledged the direction and turned to Thomas. "Do you believe he will return?" Thomas acknowledged with a nod. "If not today, then in the near future. We should ensure that we are adequately prepared. I possess a shotgun and 2 rifles." She mentioned having a needle and boiling water. That elicited a brief chuckle from him, a sound that alleviated the tension in the room. They re-entered the premises. Julia assisted with the repairs of a damaged fence post following lunch. "Sleeves are rolled up." Her hands were red and blistered. Thomas observed her efforts, not from a place of skepticism, but with a sense of quiet respect. She consistently refrained from seeking rest or assistance. She executed the necessary tasks with diligence. As evening approached, the cabin transformed from a mere shelter into a formidable fortress. Not in its structures or its armaments, but in the manner of their movement now. In unison, without words, confident. During dinner, Thomas finally mentioned that there is a dance scheduled in town on Saturday. Julia arched an eyebrow. "Do you engage in dance activities?" "I am not feeling well, but I thought it might be a good idea for us to go." Provide the community with a topic of discussion. Are you not concerned about their opinions? They will assert that I introduced the most esteemed woman across 3 counties. Julia's lips curved into a smile. She indicated that she would consider it. He acknowledged with a nod, refraining from further inquiry. However, a gentle warmth began to emanate from her chest, subtle yet enduring. Later that evening, while attending to the dishes, Thomas initiated another conversation. It is evident that Harland Pike lacks courage. Those lacking courage often conceal themselves behind regulations, she remarked. Excessively aged, financially constrained, and lacking in distinctiveness. They provide justifications to avoid acknowledging their fear of assertive women. Thomas remarked that your strength goes beyond the ordinary. You exhibit remarkable courage. She regarded him, bubbles cascading from her fingertips. I experience fear, yet I proceed with action regardless. This is the distinction. Their gazes intersected. The moment extended. Thomas approached with purpose. I would like to pursue you in a respectful manner, he stated, if you would allow me to do so. Julia observed him intently for an extended period. I do not identify as a girl. I am not here to be courted in that manner. He responded that he does not desire a romantic partner. I seek a woman who is confident in her thoughts and understands her value. She dried her hands on a cloth and remarked, Then I suppose you can commence with a dance on Saturday. He smiled with confidence. Just as she was about to savor the lightness of the moment, a knock echoed at the door. Thomas was in the process of reaching for the rifle. Julia took hold of the revolver. She opened the door slowly and with caution. It was not Cal. It was Harland Pike. He appeared more polished than she recalled. Improved attire. Apprehensive. Julia, he stated, I am here to express my apologies. She did not yield. He acknowledged his mistake. I formed my opinion too hastily. I was unaware of the type of woman you are. She declined. You have come to a realization. Your preferences simply did not align with it. He ingested. I aim to ensure it is done correctly. I have obtained a license. I have individuals available to provide testimony in the area. If you return, I will marry you. Thomas remained stationary behind her. Julia grasped the door frame and regarded Harlan for a prolonged, silent moment. Subsequently, she offered a smile. In a manner that lacks kindness. You disregarded me in front of the entire community. Allow them to find amusement in my situation. Refer to me as being too advanced in age to fulfill the role of a wife. Now that another individual recognizes my value, it appears I have become a priority for you. I acknowledge that I made an error. She declined. You underestimated my ability to connect with someone who appreciates me beyond superficial traits. She retreated and secured the door. The latch engaged with a definitive click. Thomas lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. I was not anticipating that today. I did, she stated. Individuals like Harlan tend to return when they recognize that you are no longer in a position of waiting for them. She resumed her task with the dishes, humming softly to herself. Thomas stood in the doorway, observing her intently. In the interval separating them, a sense of stability had established itself. Dignity was not merely defended. The reclamation process has been completed. The sky displayed a blend of violet and rose as dusk descended upon Rollins. From the elevation near the town's boundary, Julia observed the chapel steeple illuminated by the final amber rays of daylight, casting elongated shadows over the unpaved roads and time-worn structures. She positioned herself next to Thomas, her hands firmly clasped in front of her, while the edges of her shawl danced gently in the cool breeze. There has been limited communication since Harlan's visit 2 days prior. There was no necessity for them to do so. The silence that enveloped them had acquired a profound significance, transforming from emptiness to a deep mutual understanding. Soft melodies emanated subtly from the community hall below. The performance has commenced. Are you confident in this decision? Thomas inquired, adjusting his hat slightly to reveal the uncertainty etched on his forehead. She responded with a subtle smile. However, I will proceed regardless. He extended his arm. She accepted it. The stroll into town was serene, interrupted only by the sound of boots crunching on gravel and the sporadic whisper of wind through the foliage. As they neared the hall, sounds of conversation and laughter emanated from the open doors. The noise caused a knot to form in Julia's stomach. The years of being overlooked were not easily forgotten. Nevertheless, she maintained her composure and poise. The hall was filled with activity. Couples gracefully danced on the temporary dance floor, accompanied by the melodies of fiddles and banjos. Candles illuminated the sconces positioned along the walls. The aroma was a blend of perspiration, whiskey, and sawdust. In that moment, it was as though a cue had been given, prompting every individual to turn their attention. Julia Crowley, adorned in a modest lilac dress with her hair elegantly pinned in silver, made her entrance alongside Thomas Becket. The room came to a brief halt, a momentary pause, yet sufficient in duration. She experienced a familiar sensation in her chest, the intense heat of embarrassment she had encountered on that train platform. However, on this occasion, she did not diminish. She engaged each of their gazes individually, yet none were able to maintain eye contact for an extended period. Thomas acknowledged those he recognized with a courteous nod and guided her through the gathering. Soft murmurs accompanied them, reminiscent of boots leaving a trail of dust. However, they were inconsequential. He invited me to dance. She paused thoughtfully. I have not done so in several years. I have not either. We will not perform well. She let out a soft laugh, unable to suppress it. Your persistence is commendable. I acknowledge your presence, Julia, and I will persist. She grasped his hand. The initial steps were characterized by a lack of coordination, with unsteady movements and irregular turns. However, laughter was effortless, and before long, the rhythm re-emerged.